You're listening to the Para House Entertainment Network. Come join us as we take you deep into the fire to the paranormal realms of hauntings, UFOs, ETs, alien abductions, strange creatures, and the vastness of universal consciousness as we continue to seek what is not supposed to exist as we search for the truth that only comes from going into the fire. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Into the Fire. It's a wonderful Tuesday night down here in Kentucky, and I think it's a pretty good night down there in Tennessee where you guys are, isn't it?
It's been a pretty nice day.
Yeah, unusual, and it's getting hotter and hotter. I was just outside just a minute ago, and I was like going, wow, it's getting warmer than it was at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
And storms.
Yeah.
No, that's bad. I don't like the storms part.
I don't either.
Well, hello, chat room. Hello, everybody that's out there. We have got an excellent show for you tonight. We are so excited to have Raymond Szymanski with us tonight. And it is a wonderful thing. We also have a special guest host with us tonight because without her, I would not be able to have Raymond on tonight. Because she helped me set this all up, and we do appreciate it. I'm going to bring Debbie Mitchell-Warren in real quick to say hi to Debbie Mitchell-Warren. Hello, Debbie. How are you doing?
Hi. How are you all doing?
Awesome. We're really excited about tonight's show.
Yeah.
We thank you for helping us coordinate with Ray and get everything set up so we could do this show tonight with him. Mm-hmm. We are super stoked for it, and I know that you've got some pretty good questions for Ray also.
Yes.
And we wanted to thank you on what's going on. I'm going to do a quick bio on Ray, and then we'll bring him on the air, and we'll go from there. Okay. Raymond Szymanski is a senior scientist, engineer, paranormal researcher, lecturer, and author of Shades of Greys Trilogy, evidence of extraterrestrial visitations to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and beyond, also Victoria's Secret Truth, and Swamp Gas My Ass. Raymond worked at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for nearly 40 years and is considered to be the leading authority of all things paranormal at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Raymond does his own research, investigating all available facts and theories, all the way from the ground up, and trusting and also verifying all the information that he gets. Ray's mission is to present the original first-person research and document evidence that launches others to their own quest for the truth. And if you get the chance to read Ray's book, one of the quotes that everybody uses, the truth is in there. So we are so proud and pleased tonight to bring on Raymond Szymanski. Hello, Ray. How you doing tonight?
Fantastic. Thanks for reading my bio. Some of it was even true.
Well, Ray, we are truly honored to have you on here tonight with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have anything you want to add to the bio? Because I know that you have an extensive one.
No, not really. I mean, I'll get a chance to talk for the next 90 minutes. I'm good.
There you go. Excellent. And we appreciate you staying a little bit extra with us to be able to answer some of these questions. We're going to go real fast. I'm going to look into the chat room and say hello to our wonderful chat room who is always here. Hello, Jano and Stuart. Hello, Tom. Beth Allen. Ada Cox. How's everybody doing? Twana Bear's in here. Christy Moore Hughes. Beth Allen. Frankie Lynn. Nikki Worf, I'm sure you're going to have some great questions for tonight. Emily Melhouse, how are you? Leanne Eskew, and the list keeps on going and going. I just wanted to say a quick hi. We'll be looking for your questions also, as Tonya and Billy will keep an eye on it, be asking questions for Raymond here tonight. And we're going to get started right away. Debbie, I'm going to give you the first question if you'd like.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. I don't want to share too much tonight, but is it true that the Roswell crash is allegedly at the Wright-Patterson?
Well, you use a qualifying word that you didn't need to use, allegedly. You'd like to know, did the Roswell crash material make it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? So,
Right.
And the rest of you, don't fear. I'm not going to correct your questions.
Well, the thing is, I don't know which you can answer and which you can't, because I do know how the government can be. So that's why
you can ask me pretty much anything on the show, and if I need to do my deny training, then you'll know. But and I know it's difficult to be the first question asked. So what we have here is, did the Roswell material go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? And my answer to that is, I am 1,000% sure that it did. And the way that I know that is for two reasons. One is General Thomas Dubose was Chief of Staff of the 8th Army Air Corps in Fort Worth, Texas in July of 1947. And Jesse Marcel, who was the intelligence officer for the 509th Bomb Group and stationed in Roswell, and the person that his commander, Colonel Blanchard, ordered to pick up the crash wreckage outside Corona, which is really 70 miles northwest of Roswell. He touched it, felt it, tried to smash it, cut it, burn it. And both of those individuals said that the material, whatever it was, but we don't really know what it was, both of those said that material went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So you have the guy that picked it up. He was the first guy to handle it for the military, went to the Foster Ranch to pick it up, ran some cursory tests on it, escorted it into Fort Worth, where, of course, you know the story. They took him into an office, had the real material, then took him out into the next room and brought in a really beaten up weather balloon and brought the photographer in. And so they forced Jesse to kind of be the patsy. So the answer is yes. I pretty much know where it went. It probably went to the Materials Directorate. In fact, that's where I've traced it down to. Absolutely, 100% went to Wright-Pat.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I have one more question. Can I do one more? Because I saw it in here, and I'm going to ask for.
Of course.
Christine Moore Hughes want to know, why does the government try to deny the existence of ETs?
Wow. You know, I said I'd only be on the show for 9 minutes. I think we might have to extend. Are you guys on daylight savings time out there?
Somewhere.
Well, I'll try to give you a Reader's Digest version. The best example I like to use is, imagine that I gave you a job that you couldn't possibly do. Now, the U.S. Air Force was in charge of keeping the skies free and clear of enemies, both foreign and domestic. And suddenly, there's an adversary out there whose machines can do incredible things. They defy the physics as we know it. And so every day you'd have to wake up and you have a public going, we're giving you billions of dollars for these jet fighters and all this high technology, and you tell me you know nothing about them, and they just avoid your radars, avoid your airborne radars, avoid your ground-based radars, blink in and out, do impossible 90-degree turns at Mach 30. That's not a job you want, right? So they just basically went into this deny mode because they had no answer for the public. And the public included Congress, who, put pressure on them, especially during the swamp gas days in 1966 when they dragged them in front of Congress. So, and there's a lot of other reasons to it that have to, much larger societal kind of implications. But I think the basic one is good enough.
Well, Ray, I got to ask you a question of going to the other side of it. Somebody like yourself, a scientist coming down and going to work for the United States government and being put in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The first thing in your mind, you're probably not a person that is really going to be thinking about UFOs, aliens, and everything else, and eventually that may work into that thing. So how did you get involved in that part of coming to the base and then experiencing some things or hearing some things that made you what you are today to be able to do these researches and so forth?
In January of 1973, I was a cooperative education student out of the University of Detroit, and I was studying electrical and electronics engineering, in which I received my degree. So it was January of 1973, and I came down with three other students from the University of Detroit, and I was assigned to an office, and I had a mentor assigned to me who was, I think, a GS-12 at the time, 11 or 12. He was kind of a middle level engineer, and we'll call him Al. So first week, our building was building 22 at the time, and the video's reversed. So there were two buildings, and in between these two buildings, they were only 2-story, was this large hangar. So we're sitting in this building, and Al says, we're going to go to this building where the Greasy Spoon is at, the cafeteria, sandwich shop, and we're going to get you a candy bar, kind of a welcoming gift. So we go down this very short ramp into what today is the Wright Field Fitness Center. But back then it was an empty hangar about 250 foot in length. So we step into this thing, and it's very heavy. I want to say purplish blue. They're probably blue at one time, but they faded. And I mean, these curtains must have weighed 100,000 pounds, and they've got to be 6 stories tall, and they're blocking the windows. And there's hundreds of these windows that make up part of each door. Maybe the first 8 feet is steel, and above that is all glass to the top, and it becomes steel again. Well, these curtains were closed, and there was nothing in this hangar but darkness and spiders. So we step into this hangar, and Al says to me, now, let me set the scene. I'm week 1. I'm away from home, essentially for the first time. I got a mid-level engineer, and he's like my God at that point. He knows everything. And he turns to me and says, have you heard about our aliens?
Welcome to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
And I'm like a 19-year-old co-op student, who's really grounded in science. So, we have this conversation as we're walking through the hangar, and I said, well, what aliens? He goes, well, there was a crash in 47, and they brought their machines and their occupants here for evaluation and exploitation. And the heart rate is starting to go up a little bit. I'm thinking, he's only bribing me with a candy bar, man. So I can still turn around, So, but I wanted to be kind to him, and I was like intrigued. And I said, well, aliens? He goes, oh yeah, they're in the tunnels. I'm like, tunnels? He said, yeah, we've got tunnels here. And I said, well, can we go see these aliens in the tunnels? Well, no, we can't. Well, Al, why not? And he goes, well, because it's a secret. I said, Al, if it's a secret, how do you know?
Right. Exactly.
Well, come to find out, Blue Book had been on base, Project Sign, and then Grudge, and then Blue Book. So they had 22 years of UFO investigation right there on the base. Now, I'm in Area B at that time, and Area A is where the Project Blue Book office was. But it didn't matter, because there were stories almost weekly in the Dayton Daily News and the Columbus Dispatch and other local newspapers about Wright-Patterson and Blue Book, and then there was a TV show. So the entire base was cognizant of this thing. And so from that point forward, for that rest of that co-op session, I'd be like asking, a guy, Doug, in accounting, that Al was introducing me to everybody, as the time went on, I go, hey, Doc, I'll tell me this really crazy story about aliens in the tunnels. It was like, oh yeah, of course. And, it didn't matter who I talked to. Everybody knew about that part of the history. Yeah, we got aliens in the tunnel and Blue Book and whatnot. So, that's kind of what got me started. And then it was like every nook and cranny for the rest of my career, wherever I went to, any Air Force or contractor facility, I'm kind of looking around the corners and, talking people up about it. And it just, it just never left me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent. Excellent. It's so odd that, when everything, the mystique about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base still goes to this day. It's stronger and stronger every day. And back in that time in the in the early 70s, just like we were talking a little bit before the show, I was saying about the 1973, right about the time that you get there is a flap that goes on in Ohio, right around that area. And it goes to Mansfield. We've got the coal on stuff. We've got people sighting, all in like October of 73. There's like 15 sightings that are all with UFOs, red lights, all kinds of good things that are happening there. And what's the temperature at the base at that time? Were you a cognizant of anything that was going on like that? And are these reports, did the base have anything to say about it?
No, I really wasn't, because I spent that one session there in that office.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I transitioned to another group. And that's really what they wanted us to do was every time we had another semester length of time at the base, they wanted us to move to different types of offices. So I went from a management kind of office where I was working on some of the early database things that they were working on. That was kind of where the stuff that they were working on about personnel and places to collect information on all the projects. And when the people from Washington would come down, they wouldn't have to bug the individual scientists. They could just go to this database and kind of get a read of what the base was doing. So at that point in the fall, I moved to a group with one of my roommates at the time, and I was in a vault every day for the next session. So that would have been December, November, October, September. So in the fall, it was a different environment, and I was away from a building and a location that had a lot of people that I talked to this other place where I was pretty much sequestered with about 8 other guys working on a project that, they told us best you don't tell anybody about it. So my environment changed, and for some reason, it put me in with a different group of people that weren't so open about it. And so not at that point, it was actually quite a bit longer after that I started to pick up, and I read a lot and watched stuff on TV, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Now you became permanent there in 75, correct?
Yeah, I graduated from University of Detroit in May of 1975.
Okay. And there's just, I don't know if you can say that or not, what kind of electrical, you were an electrical engineer and a scientist with electric, correct?
Yeah, but the career is you're going to come in, you're going to do some co-op if you're lucky. And it was really nice to find out where I wanted to go to. And then they put me in a group that was doing both the software and hardware for the brand new digital aviation information system. So, most of the controls and panels in the airplanes in the early 70s, they were all analog.
Right.
And what they wanted to do is as computers were coming forward, they thought, well, this is a great opportunity to exploit that technology and, remove some weight from the airplane, increase the reliability, increase the updatability of the components to the software, rapidly swap out new electronics, as new processors became available. So, eventually, 10 years after the fact, I went to Wright State University to pursue a master's in computer engineering. So the place I went to after graduation was a group that was supporting the development of the digital avionics information system. And, we got involved in both ends, both the hardware aspects and the software aspects of it.
When looking at the hardware side of it and everything else, do you think you ever saw anything that might have been alien during that time when you're looking at different stuff that may have come across your desk and no one said, hey, try this out, look at this, and you said, where the heck did that come from? That's like amazing.
No, in fact, there's a story, and this will be an exclusive to you guys.
Thank you.
There's a story that went around that prior to the Roswell crash wreckage, Bell Labs was trying to perfect the transistor, and their stuff looked like globs of solder and just terrible stuff. And then, miracle of all miracles, after the crash material was recovered in Roswell, and guys like Colonel Corso claimed there was electronics, microelectronics. Now, this is 1947. Microelectronics, fiber optics, brain controlled things. That it went to Bell Labs, and they realized at that point that the material they were using to dope the substrates to create the transistor were incorrect, and that they back engineered this, and months later now we have us a working transistor because they found the right dopant. Well, I don't really know about that, right? But I did know the guy who helped launch the micro circuit industry here in this country through the sponsorship of the laboratory. He worked right down the hall from me, and his name was Bill Edwards. And I had a chance to talk with him, decades later. And I just said, hey, I told him what I was doing at the time. I wrote this book, and I wanted to track down this. What was the story? Did we seed Bell Labs with this technology?
Yeah.
And he thought about it for the longest time. Now, this is the guy that basically helped launch Texas Instruments by funding government, one-offs with them and, getting them up and, doing whatever TI was going to do. And he thought about it for the longest time. And I mentioned the Corso material and the crash recovery stuff. And he said, from my perspective, it was just all human ingenuity. I saw Ground Zero with Texas Instruments, who picked up the Bell Lab stuff. And, he didn't have the bridge between Bell Labs and TI. He kind of picked it up at the TI point. So from his perspective, it was a no. And then I went to another guy who was the historian for the laboratory, and he kicked me out of his office when I asked him the question.
Oh, there you go. That's to tell you something, right?
So he would never talk to me again. He was a really good friend before that.
Yeah.
But he retired, became a historian. I went to his office one day, and when I was done asking him the question, he goes, I think you better leave. And that was the end of it. Maybe he thought I was too stupid now to be his friend.
When you start asking questions about UFOs, ETs, and aliens and all of those stuff, you are back in those days when we were growing up and we were going through all that stuff. People just looked at you like, oh.
Some still do.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people still do, but that's part of the ploy that they have put against us forever and ever and ever to keep us downtrodden, I believe. But but back then it was really sensitive because that was like, and you also have to remember, and I think you can also attest to this, right? That people were very loyal to the government, and when the government said something or was supposed to be a secret or supposed to be that way, they took it to the grave because they were not going to expose anything like that. Yeah, I think that's one of the truths that I've seen several times. So, you agree with that?
You sign a secrecy oath. The penalties for breaking it are quite severe. So, it's a nice reminder if you ever go, man, I would really like to say something. And then you think the fact that you signed it coming in and you signed another copy going out.
Yes. Yeah, I had a very good friend that most of the people here that are in the show with us right now may know, but he was in the Air Force, and he was located at a SAC base, and he used to do some targeting and do that kind of stuff with the SAC bases. And he didn't tell very much to me. I asked him quite a lot of different things, but he would always say, I did sign one of those things, and it makes me scared to this day that I don't want to do anything wrong. But near the time when he gets ready to pass, he does say some stuff. And he mentioned something very odd to me, and I'm going to ask you it just to see if it how it bounces off you. He said that he would take targeting things from the SAC and would take them over to Wright-Pat from Dakota, and would go downstairs into the basement about 13 levels and give it an acid bath so that they would be destroyed. You ever heard anything like that?
No, never.
Okay. All right. Well, that goes that question. I was hoping I'd say, oh, boy, that would have been a good story.
Well, there's a lot of questions in the chat room.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and start.
Well, let me just tell you, there are over 600 buildings at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and dare say I have probably seen them all, but have I been in them all? Not a chance.
Yeah. Well, appreciate that.
Okay, so
go ahead with the questions from the chat room. Huh?
I've got a question from William Nighthawk. He says,
"Hi, William."
He says, EBEs are said to visit here, but have you ever found evidence of interdimensional or genetically engineered aliens by government?
Engineered aliens. The last part of the question is in the government or
by the government? By government.
That question doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. Could you repeat it?
Yes. Have you ever found evidence of interdimensional or genetic engineered aliens by government?
No.
Okay.
What about, I'll go a little bit further on that. What about hybridization? Do you believe that there was rumors going around for a long time and still are today that Dayton may have been one of the hot places to be able to see somebody walking around that was really not human or part human and was being experimented on? Do you ever have any dealings with hybrids?
At Wright-Pat?
Yeah.
No, but my second book, and this is a shameless advertisement.
No, that's great. Go ahead.
My second book, Victoria's Secret Truth, is my 2-year case study of a woman and her family who she has had contact with entities since she was about 6. And she believed and has some evidence to back that up, that she has been part of a hybridization program since she was small. And all the evidence that she had of her abductions and her contact, photographs thereof and testimony and that sort of thing are all contained in the book, and it's available on Amazon. It's called Victoria's Secret Truth. And it was not only her contact, but it was contact with her grandson, with whom I got to spend a couple of weeks interviewing at the location where these events took place. And so it's, one thing for an adult who knows maybe how to deceive to actually deceive. But, when you're talking to, say, a 6-year-old or 7-year-old child, and he's walking you through at the site where the experience happened, and he's taking you, and his body language changes, which is really interesting. I mean, this would have to be Academy Award stuff, and I'm not talking slapping now. Oh, you didn't get the joke, but that's okay.
I got it. It's been all over the news.
You just didn't want. Y'all didn't want to interrupt me. So he takes me through, and he's walking, and his body language changes, and it's just very convincing to watch that and drill him, from 3 different sides, and same question with nuances, and everything is just consistent. And of course, all of that testimony is included in that book. So yeah, I'm a believer that there's some kind of hybridization program going on here,
Fantastic.
but not at Wright-Pat that I know of.
We never saw anything at Wright-Pat at all like that, thinking that there may have been hybrids working within Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
I saw some very strange people at Wright-Pat. And in fact, there was this one woman, bless her soul, she tried to dress, look, and act like Marilyn Monroe. And she
Really?
wore these high 3-inch heels that she could not walk on. A foot would go down and it would go, the ankle would, and she put the next foot down. And if you watched her from the back, it was painful. It was like, oh
Yeah.
God, she's going to fall and we're going to have to go help her up.
It's like a baby.
She had to
deer
be an
trying to
alien.
walk.
She had to be an alien, but I can't prove it. So all I can tell you is there were some very strange people on that base. And to me, I'm an open mind, so there's a possibility there, but I can't prove it.
Prove it, right. I agree with you. I understand where you're coming from there. And believe me, walking around here, and we've got bases down here in southern Kentucky and in Clarksville, Tennessee, with the
101st.
Yeah.
101st Airborne down there, and it's quite an interesting sight to see when you're walking in Clarksville also. But yeah, there are so many different things. Any other? You got more questions on there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it says, have you ever heard of the alien in Sandia Mountains in New Mexico?
Yes. But I've only heard of it through popular press and, that sort of thing. It's not something that I would know through official channels, but I've done tons of reading, and there's a lot of things that have gone on, especially in and around nuclear facilities. But to me, again, it's just somebody's story. It's not something that I've investigated that allows me to give an opinion that bears any weight whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Ray, can I ask you a personal question?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Do you
Denied.
Do you believe that aliens have been with us all along, and basically a lot of the phenomenon that's being noticed now via everybody having a camera in their hand? Do you believe a lot of that might just be drones with alien technology?
Well, that's a lot of questions. Let me see if I.
Said one, right?
Yeah, well, you can.
I mean,
Well, here-
it's like their surveillance, so to say.
If you're asking, do I believe we've been visited by extraterrestrials? The answer is yes. And in fact, if time permits, which is now, I'll tell you about 2 incidents that happened to me, and they don't ever happen to me. I just write about stuff. It always happens to somebody else. But I now have Gen 3 night vision goggles, and they are superb. So about a week ago, I was out, and I usually like to step out before bed, 11 o'clock, and usually a lot of the lights in the neighborhood are off and stuff. So I stepped out, and I saw what appeared to me, imagine if you would, a beach ball that's transparent. Now imagine that you're seeing 5 of these all connected to each other, and they're moving very quickly. And now night vision, I don't know how much practice you had with these, but these things are remarkable. And this thing was moving very fast, and it transcended about 90 degrees, of the sky, I would say in about 15 seconds. So it was boogieing, and this thing was maybe only at about, again, it's night, and I got to make a guess. And I live around 3 airports, so I'm used to seeing big planes, and I'm a couple miles from the base. And so I've got a really good idea of where things are in the sky as I'm sitting on the ground and how big they are. So this thing had to be as big as a big jumbo jetliner and moving as fast as one would if it was, say, on final approach going into Columbus, which is one of the airports I see planes going towards all the time. This thing was about 5 of these beach balls. And of course, being the researcher, I'm holding out my pinky to see at arm's length how wide this is. And so, guessing at its height and the speed that it was going, this thing had to be about 300 feet long, but it was see-through. And it appeared to me that I saw stars through it, and it was very large, and it was boogieing. And I said, well, if it's a drone, where's the motor? Where's the little avoidance lights? And so I, go in and I write it up for, another day. And then 2 nights ago, I go outside. It's 11:30, and it is pristine. There are not a cloud in the sky, and it's dark. We've got no moon at that time. I got the NVGs out, and there are 2 lights. Now, when you look through the night vision goggles, stars appear very uniform, except if they're like a major star, then they'll blossom a little bit. But there's a certain look to a star, and these 3rd generation don't let the stars twinkle you. They're very solid light. And suddenly I see 2 of these, what I'll call looking just like a star, going through the sky together. And I'm looking up and I'm catching them about 45 degrees off the horizon. And there's woods behind my house. And I'm watching this over the tree line as it goes. I'm looking due west, and it goes from due west, and I follow this thing all the way to the northeast. And it's very low, and until it got to a very, deep angle to my right, the 2 lights stayed about 1 thumb width apart at arm's length. So it wasn't like the 2 planes were going to cross or they were trying to avoid each other. They were traveling together, and they looked just like a star would look. There was absolutely no collision avoidance lights, because those light up like a Christmas tree on NVGs. I'm here to tell you, they bloom and they whoop, whoop. And, fortunately I've got gated, a set. So I'm watching this. And of course, as the angle's getting further and further away, you can tell, because these 2 are staying with each other, that they stayed the same distance. What they were, I don't know. The first one, I'm willing to write off. The one I saw 2 nights ago, I have no idea. It's for you MUFON guys.
There's a lot of things, and unfortunately, the amazing thing about it is that sightings seem to be coming up quite a lot. And even though I'm no longer in MUFON this year, I seem to be getting an incredible amount of sightings still from people that know that I have a great interest in the field. But we get to see so many different things lately. And I was looking at a quick synopsis of Ohio again, because that's where Wright-Pat is. And the MUFON state director in Ohio was talking about the 100-mile radius of Wright-Patterson, and over 100 cases in a 3-year period that were reported there. And a lot of times when I do our investigations, we get them from Louisville, we get them everywhere else. And I've done some pretty big cases in Kentucky. And it seems like when they find a large triangle, I remember one that comes to mind, that there was a large triangle that was traveling down I-64 going westbound. And it was large enough to cover up both lanes of the traffic during a period of time when there was also a large medium in the middle of it. And it was interfering with the power of the tractors, trailers, computers, everything else, cars were stopping and stalling, and then as it went and made a turn and followed itself, which would be the way to go to Wright-Patterson, there was rolling blackouts also. Through your thing, what would you estimate that would cause something to do that?
Well, if you look at the history of excuse me, UFOs, they have a history of causing electrical interference. Cars
Yeah.
do stop. There's many well-proven cases of that. They leave objects that are metal magnetized, which weren't magnetized before. So there's some sort of electromagnetic field that it's got a certain effective kill radius to. And a car is a simple little thing. Spark plugs, alternator. If you should interrupt that flow of electricity, the engine needs it on a regular basis. And if that gets interrupted, it stalls. But most of the reports aren't like it sputtered to a stop. It's like it instantaneously turned it off, so the flow was completely cut, like the battery was removed, from the circuit. So yes, that's possible. The Great New York Blackout supposedly was caused by UFOs seen hovering over one of the big power stations there, and they gave us the excuse. At least it wasn't swamp gas. You got to give those guys credit. It was a blowing fuse, took out 123 million households. Yeah, right. I'm buying that. Right. Yeah, sure. It's something in my eye. It's mass hysteria. Right. But yeah, it's not unheard of. It's very common. So yeah, could it have been a flying saucer? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking too. But it's always unusual because I also get the opinion from some people that they believe that very much that we have reconstructed or re-engineered all of this equipment, and we actually that maybe part of our space force is something that's using something like that, and they seem to always want to be going to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So that's where I'm kind of going to it. If you ever, I know there's 600 buildings there, and a lot of large things like that. One hangar you were talking about that has that curtain. Well, what you could hide in there, you never would be able to see anyway.
Well, Ohio has a long history of nuclear technology development here. And in fact, again, shameless plug, in Victoria's Secret Truth, it's really up around your parts. Victoria grew up just east of the infamous Fernald nuclear facility. And as you know, it's the worst nuclear disaster in the history of the United States, where they spewed. This is a number that is mind-boggling. People don't believe it, but it's in writing. They spewed over 1 million pounds of radioactive waste into the air, into the ground, and into the water just north of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
It was the largest cleanup in the United States history for nuclear waste. And Victoria and you can read all about it in the book of the hows and why, we speculate that particular factoid is one of the reasons she has had a lifetime of contact. And also in that book, I detail and name names of all the nuclear companies that existed, starting with Fernald and going all the way up Interstate 75, past Wright-Patterson, that had its own nuclear reactor, and all of the companies that were doing nuclear research and had nuclear materials, or were actually creating nuclear materials in their facility. So the fact that these things were being spotted along a corridor that has the most population and had the most number of factories, it's amazing how much I found out. So it was no surprise during that time and onwards why those things were being seen. You had the Mound facility. The Mound facility was one of the biggest nuclear facilities. That's a blink of an eye. It's an eyelash from Wright-Patterson. So is it a surprise they're here? Absolutely not.
Right. Exactly.
I got two questions. One from Tim Smith, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You were talking about the tunnel. Does it reach Nevada?
The what?
the tunnel, I guess you were talking about earlier. I guess.
Tunnel. We were talking about tunnels at Wright-Patterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it reach Nevada?
Tunnels at Wright-Patterson has nothing to do with tunnels at
So it
Nevada.
doesn't go like it. It just stays there at the. This tunnel is not extended. It's just there at the. That more or less you want to know if it reaches like past Wright-Patterson is what.
Yeah, I know. I get the question now. People have speculated that there are tunnels, high-speed trains, and all that going in between secret bases. You know, that is possible from what we know about tunneling technology. The tunnels I was in at Wright-Patterson, you know, they terminated somewhere that I could tell. So, to the best of my knowledge, and you know, while I worked on the base, and I worked there for, you know, 38 years and 9 months, I rounded it to 40. Okay, so don't hold my feet to the fire. But I stayed there for almost 40 years, and long tunnels between classified facilities like that, never heard of it. Absolutely never became a topic of conversation.
There was one other question. Emily Men's house. She was wanting to know why did they pick Wright-Patterson to bring the Roswell instead of Area 51? Pretty much, why did they?
Give that girl a gold star. In 1917, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base started what was called the Materials Laboratory. And back then, you know, it was very simple. You know, what kind of cloth works best, you know, on a Wright B flyer. And then they start getting into metals and that sort of thing. So their job was to help create materials for the airplanes. And back in 1917, they were very simple. Now they're highly sophisticated, and they have machines there that you put a piece of metal in, and they can do an elemental analysis and tell you to, you know, 1,000th of a percent what's in that metal. So 1947 is a 30-year fast forward, and the world center of expertise in materials, in aerospace materials, was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And everything that I have ever read or heard points to the materials directorate as being the first stop with that material. Somebody came in. Now, if you recall the story, Jesse Marcel said, hey, I was the first guy up there with Sheridan Cavett. He was another intelligence agent. They went up there and they packed their cars with this stuff, and they brought it back. But the description was most of it was 2 or 3 inch square material. You know, the biggest piece they found was like a 2 foot by 4 foot. So my understanding of my research says they just bought a couple of the smaller I-beams and maybe, you know, 50 pieces of it in a briefcase, totally hidden. They get on the base, you know, they make an appointment with the director and the scientist, and they say, look, we found this stuff. You don't need to know any more about it, but we did some cursory tests, and it looks very unusual to us. Can you do something that will tell us to characterize what it is we've got? And, you know, tell us how long you need. You'll have that long. Write us a report, and then, you know, we'll go from there. So they come in, they get a report, they discuss it, they ask questions of the scientists. Maybe they go back and forth a couple of times. And finally, there's a report or single report. They tell everybody, we were never here. This never happened. You're sworn to secrecy. And back then, everybody just shut the heck up. So Wright-Pat had the security oaths. They had the secret facilities. They had top scientists. They were the world center for materials. They had money if they needed to buy time of a scientist. They had absolutely everything you need to find out everything you could find out at the time about that material. There was no other place in the world in 1947 where that material should have or did go than Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Okay.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I've got to ask you, what kind of damage do you think that Project Blue Book, Hynek did to I know Hynek changed his mind near the end, but just you probably weren't there when it ended. Project Blue Book ended in January 1970, but I'm sure that put a big stake around that area for a long, long time. How can, as an author and so forth, what kind of damage do you think that Project Blue Book actually did to the UFO field about coming, as far as other people becoming truth? Do you think people bought a lot of the stuff that they were saying with the swamp gas and all that other stuff?
Wow. Again, we're going to need 3 more hours, so I'll try to be. One of the reasons I never wanted to write a book, I never thought about writing a book about UFOs and that sort of thing. But I started to read things where people were impersonating being an expert on Wright-Patterson. And many of those are the Roswell authors. And I'm excluding Stanton Friedman from that because I have the deepest respect for the man. And he treated me very well, shared a lot of, good conversation. But others who became famous on Roswell, in many cases, never visited the base. And they have written things that were false. In fact, in the book that I think was called The Real Area 51, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and it was by Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, the last couple pages in that book are a story about a base commander who they call Colonel Stacy. And it's a story of how Colonel Stacy was not going to let Don Schmidt on my base. And it makes Don look like this really nefarious guy that the base commander doesn't want to deal with. Well, what Don Schmidt and Tom Carey did not know is at the time that incident was supposed to have taken place, Colonel Spacey, not Stacy, so they used the wrong name, was my direct boss. I was assigned to him as the base director for wellness. And when their book came out, and again, they've never set foot on the base and have, airing dirty laundry, Don lied about his college credentials. He fabricated witnesses. He fabricated evidence. His own co-author, Kevin Randall, disowned him and wouldn't work with him any longer. There was this history that I was starting to read books, and I was especially sensitized to the BS that these fake artists were putting out there. And I just decided that one of the reasons I was going to start writing these type of books is I was going to correct their BS. I wanted to make sure that I had a voice, and I believe I have that voice now. So I contacted my ex-boss, who's now a 2-star general. And I said, this was in a book with Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, and I sent him a copy of the pages. He sent me an email back and said, don't know this guy, don't know the lieutenant colonel that they said talked to me, never heard of him, never heard of Schmidt, never heard of Carey. This is all fabricated. Yeah. I have an email to that effect. So that was my motivation for starting to write about this stuff, because I was starting, and that brings me to Hynek. Hynek's writing all the stuff. He was hired by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I'm reading this stuff, and it was BS. And I said, there's got to be more to this than what Blue Book is putting out and Hynek is putting out. And that's when I start doing my own little snooping and field investigations and talking to people and finding, firsthand witnesses to key events. And, when I started, I didn't care. Aliens, yes, don't care. Aliens, no, I don't care. I just want to know the truth, because it wasn't making sense. And short answer to Hynek, he did more damage to the understanding of ufology. He set that back 50 years. I know he flipped sides and he had this stall-like bolt of lightning off the horse kind of, biblical thing going on. He didn't do it because he wanted people to understand what was going on. He did it for the money. He was cut off from the money from the government. He needed a new circus. And so he flipped sides. That's what it was all about. And that's the thing that annoys me the most about Dr. Hynek,
Yeah.
He wasn't motivated to tell the truth for the truth's sake. He was motivated because, hey, now I gotta pay for the rest of my bills that the government was paying for. So he did a huge disservice. And regardless of what his minions say the good he did, and he did do a lot of good, I forgive him, but I'm not going to forget what he did. I think it's set ufology back 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah. At certain
Sorry
points,
for
yes.
the soapbox, but you have
No,
touched
no, no.
what-
You are. I can stand on that soapbox right with you and preach the same thing. One of the interesting things about it, and I wanted to just touch base with it about it. Do you believe, talking about Project Blue Book again, do you believe that all the cases that have come out as written by or saved by Project Blue Book are actually in there? Because I don't think they're all there.
Oh, they're absolutely not.
Yeah.
There's JANAP 146, JANAP, Joint
Yes.
Army Navy Air Force pamphlet. That was still in place. It was in place during Blue Book and in place afterwards. And I know I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I think it was the guy by the name of General Bollinger or Bolender. I'm having a senior moment, but he's the guy who explained to the world, and he's the guy that shut down Project Blue Book. He says in that goodbye memo, by the way, you're not going to be able to report back to us, Mr. Public, but JANAP 146 is still in place, and we're still going to do this military reporting. So, in fact, and Swamp Gas My Ass, the main guy is a colonel, and I asked him about JANAP 146. Now, here's a guy who was a full-bird colonel by the time he got out, and he held some of the most crucial defense positions in this country, was fully unaware that JANAP 146 was actually something he was supposed to pay attention to as a pilot, even after he'd been debriefed twice by intelligence officers after intercepting that UFO. So even the most elite were unaware that it was there, but it was there.
Yeah.
It was there. So no, we probably only got the ones that they could explain by Venus and swamp gas and mass hysteria.
Right. Right. Well, that helps me out a little bit because I won't go into it. We'll go into it some other time when we're together. I can much rather continue it with you elsewhere. But also, at the same time, we have at the early age of Roswell, that's when we have the formation of MJ-12. And then we also kind of go into, which is, I'm not even sure if it's still not around as Magi or whatever else it's running at. What's your thought of that?
My thought of Magic 12?
Mm-hmm.
Just 12?
MJ-12 or Magi now.
Guys like Friedman, who, I got to talk briefly with Friedman, and by briefly I meant an entire week, because a friend of mine had a table at the International UFO Congress, and she's very famous, Yvonne Smith, who's the hypnotic therapist. Because she's one of the primary persons, her table was right next to Stanton Friedman's table. And she said, she allowed me to come in. This was when my first book came out. She said, hey, I'll let you sell books at my table if you sell my book for me when I'm gone. Well, who do I get to sit next to all week? Stanton Friedman is right there. So I got to pick his brain forever. Yeah. And Stanton believed in Majestic 12, and I've read the book where he discusses it. I have not researched that myself. So what's my gut feel? My gut feel is there has to be some small elite group that is running this and is making the policy. And then they run it up whatever flagpole they have to, whether it's the Justice Department or Department of Defense or the President or the Director of National Intelligence, but they report to somebody, they come up with the policy decisions, and they're most likely, accepted and followed. So do I think it's a possibility? Absolutely. Do I think the Majestic 12 documents are real? I have no idea. Again, I'm in the middle. Do I care? Yes. No. Don't
Yeah.
care. Don't care. But it just seems I'm comfortable with the fact that there's got to be somebody running the show, and I don't think it's one person. It's too big for one person.
Yeah, I agree with you on that way. Also, I definitely believe that there's a as we hear more now, the deep dark state. But I believe there's someone in there that has a lot of knowledge, and it's more than one person. And it may have been 12 to start off with, it may be 40 now. I don't know what it is,
It
but
could be.
yeah, something's very different happening with it. Um, Stanton and there were so many great uh, guys back in the early days. It was that were with Stanton and did a lot of different stuff, and even around the area of Kentucky here, and Stanton, Kentucky, Bowling Green in '70. Oh, when was it? I got to see him there? It was later than that. I can't even remember the date, but it was a pleasure meeting him and talking to him. He was just a wonderful man. Another terrible loss to ufology, unfortunately. Um, any other questions in the chat room?
Yeah, Christy
I got one
Moore-Hughes
more.
wants to.
Okay,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
I was going to let Tonya. No, I just said the parts were taken to Wright-Patterson from the crash or whatever. So the alien autopsies, were they done at Wright-Patterson or were they done at Area 51, or do you know that? Or did you see any autopsies performed
No,
or heard of them being?
Yeah, I've heard of them. I'm very familiar with the Ray Santilli film. That is, I saw Ray live. I was a speaker in 2019 at UFO MegaCon in Laughlin, and Ray was there peddling something. I don't recall him being a speaker. He did ask a lot of questions of people who were on stage, like Jeremy Corbell and others who are documentarians. And Jeremy was there to present his Bob Lazar thing. Ray Santilli struck me as a huckster, as a self-promoting huckster who was just trying to hustle somebody into the, paying him for the next thing. That's just my raised on the streets of Detroit kind of assessment. So as far as the film is concerned, I think Ray himself actually came out and said it was phony, and then retracted that. And people have shot bullet holes in it. So my thought says it's always a possibility, but I'm 99% sure it's phony.
Okay.
That's my humble opinion. Again, without researching it, but watching it a couple times and being exposed to some of the people that were in that loop, just doesn't strike me as being real. But that doesn't mean we don't need aliens to make what everyone else has been seeing a reality. We don't need aliens or an autopsy. So keep that in mind.
No, but are the aliens actually working at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or like helping?
That would be far above my pay grade, and I would say that would be highly doubtful.
Okay.
It really would. Yeah.
Okay.
Really
Okay.
would.
We'll let Tonya go ahead.
It's a good question, but
I don't know. In my opinion, there's something very strange. All the years that I lived in Ohio, there's something very strange about Wright-Patterson Air
I
Force
believe
Base.
they are helping government in some way, some form.
that's okay. I'm really not here to change your beliefs, but
Yeah, I know.
you're asking me what I saw and what I feel, and
Sure.
That's me.
600 buildings, 25,000 people. Even though I was the wellness director for 2 years, and I was one of the few people on base at that time who could send an email to the entire base population, all civilians and all military. Now, that was reserved for just a handful of people, base commanders, 4-star generals, and that sort of thing. Well, as a result of the widespread nature of that program, everybody on base knew who I was, but there's no way that I could know everyone except if they showed up at our functions, which we held 3 or 4 times a week for 2 years, and I got to know people that way. And I got to do I got in a lot of buildings that way because we would do health screenings. We would do cholesterol tests. And at one time they were through intravenous retrieval, and then they were the finger stick method. So we had a group of dedicated nurses who were on the base, and I would organize and set it up, and I would get the people signed up and scheduled. And then we would do those tests right at their facility. And so that got us into a lot of buildings that I never ordinarily would have went into or could even have gotten into. So, again, there would be so much to see. And one other thing, I got to say this. When you hear stories about some electrician or some plumber or some guy that moved the board in and he lifted a tarp and he saw the aliens, as soon as you hear that story, run in the other direction, because there's not a grain of truth to it. That's not the way it works. We don't let the plumbers and electricians and the lumber movers lift the tarp and see an alien. I cannot tell you how that boils my blood. Yeah, y'all a bunch of morons. The plumber and his crack, and he distracted me with his crack, and he saw the alien by lifting the tarp. Man, that
Almighty crack.
Out came the space hamsters, huh?
the old Phil McCracken joke.
Yes.
And that boils my blood.
So, like, doing those tests, did you ever find anything like crazy? When you have to go in and do those tests on the people?
Yeah, we did. What we found out is that we saved a lot of lives. And in particular, and this worked out extremely well for me, 2 of the people, now this is out of, we actually traveled. Not only was I in charge of what was going on at Wright-Patterson, but I was also in charge of wellness centers around the country that I established. I established leaders, and then they would bring in experts to do things. I would go in and teach classes, and this was places like, we had some of our outposts in Mesa, Arizona, up in Boston, down at Eglin. So around the country, we would do this, and senior leaders get moved around all the time. And we did, and I'm talking senior executive service, they're the equivalents of a general or admiral. Twice during the time I was the wellness director, not only for those 2 years, but I was also wellness director for the Sensors Directorate, and after that, the wellness director for Air Force Research Labs, which is several thousand people all over the country. 2 of the people that had the worst cholesterol and blood pressure and other things wrong with them were told by the nurses, you need to get immediate treatment and you need to go to the hospital. And when they went to emergency and showed the test to the person, they said, yeah, you'll sit down and we'll take care of you. And they found these issues with these 2 senior leaders. Now, this is among thousands of people. As the fates would have it, those 2 senior leaders wound up being my direct bosses during my career. And both of them credited me with saving their lives. Now, you can't imagine how well that worked out for me.
Right?
And the guy goes, I'm your boss and you saved my life. Oh, yeah. You want an extra week's leave? Hey, just tell me when you get back. So that's trying to answer your question. We found that the higher rank the person was, the longer hours they worked, and the less that they cared for themselves. They were trying to give for their people and that sort of thing. And we were just fortunate to catch those 2 individuals. One person, they just said, we're not sure how you made it here. Now, it wasn't limited to senior leaders, but there were also several other people that we found, and of course, hundreds of others that needed to change their lifestyle or, get a quick fix or medication or do whatever. And we launched programs to help mitigate that. But
Yeah.
it was those kinds of things that are very unusual, but it was mostly, the senior guys that were the worst off,
Hmm.
at least until we caught them.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, and you're helping
Mhm.
service. I have when you talk about blood and everything, I got to ask you a question because I have dealt with some abductees in my past, and a lot of these people that have the government seems to be very interested in their blood work, and even after they are uh, out of service, they are still kind of kept in a blood work program where the VA asks them to go and have blood tests and so forth. Um, you think that there's a certain geno or something that they're looking for in the DNA that makes these people more susceptible? Take for instance your case with the your second book. I'm sure that she's had some other stuff happen with her also. Um, what's your thoughts on that?
I know nothing about that program. My Victoria and Victoria's Secret Truth, people know who she is.
Mhm.
We actually discussed at one time, kind of offline, because I spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours interviewing her. I spent two separate occasions out where she lives, and spent a week in the area and going over the sites where she had experiences and her grandson and that sort of thing. And we
Mhm.
actually discussed, you know, what do you think of a scientific experiment where you and some of your experiencers would donate some blood and we would do a medical project and then maybe put that in a book and you'd have thought I threw something in the punch bowl at that point. She wanted
Yeah,
no part of that and thought that was extremely dangerous,
really.
for all the right reasons.
Yeah,
And I backed off that idea. It was just me, spitballing as a scientist, going, "Well, I really would like to know what you
yeah.
just talked about." And I don't know of anything like that that's happened. And I certainly, if she's any indication, I think there would be some resistance.
Okay. Yeah. I have one more question. From your experience with her, or um, did she ever experience my labs or talk about my labs?
No, no, but
Okay.
I know a couple of her friends are making a living off of going to conferences and talking to my labs. And again, you know, I'm not military. I worked
Hmm.
with military people. I spent all that time, on the military base. So I'm a little sensitive when people get up there. And I won't mention her name, but one of the most famous of the experiencers who worked on a famous program called Baywatch. So you know who I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
I'm not giving her name. So she did a talk, and I was just curious. And so, I'm a Q&A guy, so I got up there and I said, I've worked 40 years on an Air Force base, and I know that there are bases that are closed that civilians might take you dressed in military garb, and that it might appear to you that it's a mill lab. So I really like to know how you're sure, because you've spent a career telling people it's been a mill lab thing or
Yeah.
my lab, whatever. It's got to be
Lab.
mill lab.
Lab. Yeah.
And so I asked some simple questions like, did they have a name tag on? No. Um, did they have insignia? No. Um, were they wearing any kind of weapons that were military, any badges, anything? Well, they had military uniforms on. I said, I can go to the surplus store and get that. Well, um, I saw a sign that said, thus and such base. And yes, it's true. There are mothball bases that, for a while will still have their old signs up. Or you can make one and stick it on a sign and drive them past and let them see that you can fake a MyLab very easily. So
Yeah.
it upsets me that people are denigrating the military with zero proof, and all the people in the audience will go, "Oh yeah, it's a MyLab. Oh, we feel so sorry for you," and it's absolutely zero proof. And then I confronted somebody face to face while they were at a stand, and it just absolutely peed them off, and they've not talked to me since because I said I didn't go the long route. I go, "What evidence do you have of this?" "Well, I absolutely am sure." "Great. Share with us the evidence." "I don't have any. Stop asking me these tough questions."
Yes.
So it just cheeses me off, and I'm not buying into it. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. We, the military, and I mean, my past connections, we have better things to do than to take some fat, dumpy lady out of her house of Sedona and drive her to a closed base and ask her questions about aliens. Like, we don't have better things to do.
But what about the Men in Black? They're famous for showing up at people's places that have experiences and stuff like that. Are they alien, or do you know anything about the Men in Black, or
Will you look at the time? I think we gotta go. Men in Black, CIA, NSA, don't care. Men in Black? Okay, that's a great question. All that good stuff. I've had personal experiences with multiple people who acted and dressed the part of Men in Black. So I think that possibility is open. And I have interviewed people, some who wrote books about it. I had a chance to do one-on-ones. And if I ever write a fourth book, if that ever happens, like I don't know, researcher's notebook or something, I would cover Men in Black in there because I talked to a person who actually wrote a book about his encounters and what happened to him and how they messed with him and his family and that sort of thing. And the most mysterious part about his whole story is that he was enlisted with a publisher with whom he signed a contract. And after that publisher published 1,000 books and, fulfilled the terms of the contract, the publisher disappeared off the face of the earth.
yeah?
And so there were only 1,000 copies ever printed, and he could never get anyone to print more. I guess he could have waited till Create Space came along, and this is a classic Men in Black story that I hope I live long enough to retell.
Yeah. Excellent.
So yeah, I think there's something to it. There's agents out there who were hired to obfuscate the truth about this whole alien thing. And, maybe their actions got confounded with guys who just dressed fancy in suits. But yeah, I think there's some element out there that was working to keep us all quiet. Whether they were Men in Black or not,
Right.
I don't have a lot of evidence.
What was the name of that book again?
Yeah, not going to mention it. No.
Can't blame a girl for trying,
Yeah, not going to mention it. I'll give you a hint, though. He had a radio show at one time. That limits it to about 1,000 people.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So, it's, I having you here is just a joy, and I can keep you here forever. I know that I promised everybody that I would get you off in time, but I need to talk a little bit about how people can get a hold of you. Are you still looking for people that have experiences and still wanting people to contact? No, at one time I believe you were doing that, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm having so much fun. If you want to extend this for the 2-hour period, let's do it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I appreciate that so very much. Thank you.
Not a problem. I've had less fun and stayed longer. Okay. So and since I'm supposed to be coming down to your part sometime in June, then
Yes.
maybe you won't hold this against me.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm looking forward to that very much. I'm looking
Yeah, I
forward to
am
meeting
too.
you one-on-one personally. And folks, you can also do that. What we're talking about right now is we are putting together a wonderful event Debbie is working with. Debbie, you want to explain that event real quick, and then we'll get back into what we're with Raymond here and go from there.
Yeah, I got lucky and got the Night Stalkers team. I don't know who Bear can bring, but hopefully Tanya and Billy or whoever can come, and Ray. And we're gonna have the public come. It's for $50, but Raymond can share more at that time, a little bit what you might share with us during that event. And then we will talk. We might even have a sky watch that night because I have a lot of activity here where I'm at, and hopefully they follow me there so we can see something. Um, and then we're going to do an investigation. It's a tavern, the Abner Gaines Tavern, June 18th. And, and then all the proceeds go to the Night Stalkers team. Ray to come, and I have to feed him, which I'm going to feed Ray, make sure he's fed well. And the tavern.
I eat very light, so
Yeah. Don't feed the bear, whatever you do.
So I'll make sure you're fed well. But I really appreciate you, Ray. You don't even know how much, and you, Bear, and your team
Well, thank
for
you so
doing
much.
this. For doing this.
Well,
Yeah,
we're doing
I
this
think a lot
also
of people
for-
need to talk, because there's so many people right now that get silenced. They're afraid to talk. They get judged. And like me, I'm a lifelong experiencer. I've seen this stuff, and I've seen so many weird things that I like to talk to you about, even with my father himself. I think this runs in families because my kids see the UFOs, my grandkids are seeing them, and it's like, I it's in my family. So I just want to talk to you about that and let people know, hey, if you all need to talk, we're here for you.
Yeah, so
That
we've been doing that for a long, long time, and I think everybody on this screen here
yeah,
would attest to it. We love to help people. We love to hear your stories, and we love to see what we can be able to work with you and get you some help if you need to, or just tell you, because we all have dealt with this program for a long, long time. I'm very much looking forward to June 18th at the Gaines Tavern, which Abner Gaines built. It's a very wonderful historic home, big place, big investigation. It's also known as the Gaines Murder House. So there's a lot of good stuff about it. But also, we're going to be in a high area of UFOs. And you know how I always love UFOs, and I spent most of my career doing, paranormal is one thing. I do all the things paranormal, from Bigfoot to UFOs, and I have a very special bleeding heart for abductees and for um, others that have sightings and everything else and work with it. And I am so glad to have Ray that is coming out there and doing it. And the Gaines House is also going to benefit from a lot from this, because this is all the for to continue the home and its history. And it is a very old home from the early 1800s. And I think you'll have an excellent time there, and look for more about it too, because we were really excited about it. Speaking of the paranormal and knowing the paranormal, Ray, we always say that you are the best to know all the paranormal around Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I've heard that many times before. Have you had any other paranormal, unusual experiences around that area?
let's see. This would have been 2000 and 2011. This would have been 5th of December 2011. I had a traffic accident in November of 2010.
Mhm.
And this traffic accident is what convinced me to retire early. I mean, if 38 years and 9 months is early, but I was going to hang in for the old 42 years, and I was loving what I was doing. We were doing flight testing on a new project out at Yuma Proving Grounds, which is this glorious place. You can never see more stars in your life because there's nothing for 100 miles in any direction. And I had been in a traffic accident, and I was coming home. It was the middle of the day in early December, and I was coming home southbound on a road. The base was to my back, only about a mile and a half behind me, and it was one of those days that time of year where the clouds just hang over a two-story building. It's like, how do the clouds get this low?
Right.
And yeah, you've seen it. It was just one of those days, and I had my car had a moonroof. Now I'm on a road that you can't drive down without a plane from Wright-Pat crossing over sometime during the day because you're that close. You're 2 miles from the base. At this point, a mile and a half. I'm heading home. I had this accident. I had a therapy appointment, and I'm driving home, and I saw something either out of the corner of my eye or it hit the dashboard or whatever, but I saw a disturbance in the light in the cab in my car, and the first thing that came to mind is an airplane flew overhead. But I thought it was odd because it was super cloudy and I didn't hear an engine. And these are all, A-10s or big cargo planes or whatever, and they're loud. They'll shake your plane. So I thought that's odd. So I'm cruising to a light, and I'm trying to mind the light in front of me. Don't hit the guy that's in front of me as he's slowing down. Yet look out the front windshield because the object gave me the appearance that it had come from back to front. So whatever was going to be out there was going to be in front of me. And so I'm looking down, one eyeball on the guy in front of me, one eyeball up top, and I see a craft, which I later determined is about 9 feet across. And it looks kind of like the back of a Batmobile. It's in my first book, another shameless plug. I discussed the incident in my first book, and I got about a 7 or 8 second view of it as the back end of it made its way over this 2-story building and into this cloud bank. Well, it was going my direction. It was about 200 feet in front of me, about 100 foot off the deck, and I thought, hurry up, light, because we're both going the same way, man. And so, I was in Ohio, you don't honk your horn, you don't do that. Only an emergency. So, but I was tempted. So a couple of guys go in front of me, and now as I'm going down this road, those properties are heavily wooded on that side of the road. So the trees there are 50 or 60 foot tall, which tells me that if this object did not gain altitude, it's literally floating over the tops of those trees. And I'm like, clouds, get away. And I can only see it's 2 lanes southbound, 2 lanes north, and intermittently there's a middle turn lane. And I'm coming up to my turn, and I knew it was hopeless because it had been like a quarter of a mile or so to turn into my plat. And I just gave up. But I was like, screw it. I don't care if I get in an accident. I got to see this thing again. And I kept looking up the window, and it was gone. So I had my own very close-up sighting, but I never filed that report for a couple of years with the National UFO Reporting Center.
Yep.
And the reason I didn't is I waited for corroborating evidence. I wanted to see if anybody else had reported that during maybe a reasonable time frame. And a couple of years later, when I finally got back into New Fork, actually it was more than a couple of years later because, I published my first book in 2016, and I was working on it in 2015. So this was 4 years later. So 4 years later, I dipped back into the New Fork database, and there were 5 UFO sightings in Dayton that week.
Wow. Yep.
So it's a light corroboration that something was going on that precise week, and then eventually I filed my report.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. I have a quick question. With people that have experiences, okay, this is mine, and I'm going to kind of like these things control the environment. They have to, because about 9 years ago, and I told Bear about it. I saw the orange glowing ball of light. It was orange and glowing. And I'm like, what in the world is this? But before it actually came to me, my street light got knocked out, and this big shadow beam went all the way across my yard, all the way to the porch that I'm standing on. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? I mean, it was huge. It even knocked my street light out. So I'm sitting there thinking, what's going to happen next? And I'm here, by myself thinking, this is really neat. So then as it comes, it goes gliding over a treetop level at my house. And I'm standing on the porch just watching it. And it was the most angelic experience I've ever had in my life. I mean, it was like peace and like angels. It was really weird. And I'm thinking to myself, somebody's got to see this, because this is in the city type part. It wasn't in the country. And nobody reported it. I did report to Bear. I did call him after it happened. I had shadow beings after in my house for 1 week. That were in my house for 1 week. I don't know what these shadow beings were. I just saw the shadows of him. And I'm thinking, why is it that this huge football-sized UFO going over me, people didn't report it? So, or did they choose certain people to and control the environment? Have you heard of that? Because I got another thing too about a plane thing that looked like a plane, the body of a plane with no wings, no tail, and it was going from east to west when I was going down the highway, down 75, going north. And I looked up, and it got my attention. I'm like, that looks like a plane, but I don't see the wings or nothing on it. And it's going in the direction of regular planes around here don't go. As soon as I kept my eye on it and I was driving, I looked and it disappeared. And as soon as it disappeared, this big, gigantic bird came from the sky, gigantic, down towards me on my car. It almost made me wreck, because I was like, oh my God, I didn't expect this gigantic bird to come down flying on me like that. Have you ever heard of that? I know shadow beings and
Well,
birds.
that's a lot to digest, but I think I can piece that. Let's do it one. Let's eat this elephant one bite at a time.
Okay, because
Um, I have read in the popular publications about spouses being switched off while the person who's being abducted was being abducted. Now
Yes.
I've read books about that, and I'm sure you have to. But to back that up, I know of at least 2 cases of persons who I know, and I know them very, very well, that I have not published anything about their stories at this point, that happened to them. And they are both highly respected individuals in a very critical type of an occupation. And they are as trustworthy as they come. And both these individuals are female, and their husbands were switched off
Yeah.
and had no idea of what was happening. So at least I know in that localized kind of environment that can be done. Now, with respect to this bird coming down, let's just say it was a normal bird, but if this bird, which has got, we're all electrical entities, our brains are electrical impulses. If it flies through the field being generated around the exterior of this craft, well, that's going to interrupt those electrical pulses, and momentarily it could become disoriented and literally fall out of the sky. And flocks of birds have done that. So in this particular instance, you're scaring me now too, because moving on to the next thing, when I drive down the street, many times the street light will turn off.
yeah,
And my wife will look at me going, you're doing it
I've done
again.
that for years. Yeah, I can't
Yeah, I
drive
have the
some
same
vehicles.
problem.
I have vehicles go out on me, from starters to alternators. Anything I get in, if I'm upset, or if I'm anxious or anything, I do not get in any car at all, because I will affect cars bad with
My
my.
my suggestion is, and this is not medical advice, but having talked at length with hypnotic therapists, people like Yvonne Smith, Barbara Lamb, Leo Sprinkle, who Leo Sprinkle wrote the foreword for Victoria's Secret Truth, and actually watching people being regressed and that sort of thing. And my brother Frank is now a retired therapist. Um, I always recommend to people like yourself to find a qualified hypnotherapist. Uh, if you want to get in the ballpark, find out somebody who knows a lot about PTSD, because there are a lot of similarities to that on how it impacts the individual. And for the most part, from what I've read and seen, that these type of things help calm the person down who goes through this, helps them understand it. It gives them some framework, some frame of reference, and you'll find out you're not alone. There are tens of thousands of people that are going through the same thing that you're going through. There's something that they can't quite understand, and that's why a lot of people go to these UFO conferences, because
Sure.
people like Yvonne Smith will host an experiencer panel, an experiencer meeting every day of the conference. And I went to those just because I wanted to find out more about what was going on. And the stories are fascinating and they're mind blowing, and it's a great kumbaya. And I just see that, especially after someone has gotten a chance to tell their story, and Yvonne gives equal time to everybody. Uh, they the look on their face, especially if they're first timers that I haven't seen before, is one of relief.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not crazy. And everyone, they're getting the nod heads, the nodding heads, and that sort of thing. And just being there is therapeutic. And to me, I get a little joy out of it to see these individuals who come in and they're fidgeting with whatever papers in their hands and all this. And you could see them start to go, hey, this kind of sounds like some of the stuff I'm going through. And, maybe near the end, I'll stand up and talk about this. So, Yvonne then gets her clients, and she meets with a lot of people during the week. But that's what I would recommend, because
I actually want to do that. I want to go through a hypnotherapy thing, because I remember a lot of my experiences. I can say my dad had some amazing abilities, which I think could be alien related, because of the things that he was able to do. And I saw with my own eyes that he said I could do, but I chose not to. Like some of the things, because I already scared a lot of people in my life. I've got like family that wouldn't talk to me because they think I'm weird, or the devil's work, because I would have these psychic abilities or something, that I would know things that would happen before they would happen. And I was a child. I thought it was all normal. I'd see ghosts. I mean, I would see, and seeing my dad do things that, I couldn't even talk to my friends about it. I would scare them off and they would never talk to me again. So that was the only thing I don't care about the UFOs. Was never afraid of them. I feel like I'm actually part of them when they come. I feel like I'm a big part of them. So they don't scare me. It's the humans that have really judged me so bad that always been my problems, the human beings.
given time, you should write these things down, and just go, here's my history, and write it down. And if you have a word processor, sort through it, because I think this would be greatly beneficial. Especially if you contact, I give you a recommendation in your area of somebody you might want to start with, and you could contact their office and say, yeah, I know their time is precious, so I've written these things down, and they get to know you, and then it'll help you focus on what it is you really wish to learn. Do you want to know? I want to know if I've been taken. So they'll ask one line of questions. I want to know if, this is a psychic ability, or, I just have some elevated talent kind of thing. So writing it down helps you organize your thoughts, helps saves time. And then, if this is a big organization and they have 10 therapists, they might pass it around. They might powwow on it, helps them prepare, or it might help them pick the exact right person for this. Somebody says, "Oh yeah, I've seen this before, and I know how to handle this." So I think writing it down is a good start.
A lot of my work that I do for people, I feel like I'm here to help people. I feel like that's my goal in life is to help anybody I can until I die. So what I do is I can actually astro project myself to places, people's homes from my home. I don't even have to leave my house, and I help them. I've done it for years now, and it's really weird. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I can do it, and it freaks me out. But I do help people, so that is my payment. That's why I don't charge nobody for nothing. I feel my payment is to help people, so that's like having $100,000 in my pocket because I've just helped like somebody in another country or state or whatever. That's just me. I'm just odd like that. I don't know why.
Do you want me to put you to the test, but not in real time? You can astral. I'm giving you permission to astral project into my office where I'm sitting right now.
Okay.
Okay, and when you look, what are you seeing right now? You're seeing the poster behind me, right?
Right.
Can you see and there's a little chart or something on either side. It's just dead space. Do you see anything else there right now on your screen?
No.
Okay.
I
No,
just
of
see
course
it.
you don't.
I just see kind of just
Okay.
the
So
sun.
you're going to astral, when you find time, you're going to astral project. You have my permission, and I own one stuffed toy. You're going to tell me what that one stuffed toy is.
Okay.
Okay. And if you get it right or not, I don't care because I'm
Right.
not, but I'm going to give you an opportunity. Now, if you get it right, then that's going to be really scary on the 18th of June.
Yeah.
But and I'm not going to tell anybody whether you got it right or wrong, but you just take all the time you want and you can astral project into my office. And I have one stuffed entity, and no, it was not alive before. It's just cloth and who knows what. But okay, so
Okay.
that sounds fabulous. You've got a lot of things that I think you could share with somebody who is trained to listen and make sure they record it. Yeah, you want
Right.
video, audio, so you can go back and have that to try to figure out what's going on. And it's
Right.
great. People I've talked to said they learned so many things about themselves.
I have a Facebook group too that I can show like a lot of people if they don't, where I've actually connected to people's homes that
Yes.
I do it for free all the time. They can see every comment. I leave everything in there. So, and I actually can project to their houses, but they feel me that they do actually feel my energy there, which is really weird because I ask them that. I said, can you feel me there? And don't be afraid when you feel me there, So I do kind of pick out certain things that I think could be there, and I ask them, and just that lets me know that I've connected to their home, or I explain it outside their house, or something like that.
I believe in all of this because I've had a similar capability
I think we all have that ability.
my entire life. In fact, we had another incident of it tonight. Sitting there watching television, thinking about, okay, I got to get this ready, come down. And my son lives 10 minutes from here. Hadn't talked to him in about a week. And all of a sudden, I got a flash. And I thought of my son. And I was just thinking about, we play golf together. And I was just thinking about him in the golf capacity. Now, again, just hadn't thought of him in a week. 3 minutes later, he's calling me from northern Kentucky, and he's down there at a beer and wine store and wants to know if I want some of this German Märzen, a German smoke beer. So think about this. Northern Kentucky, you guys,
Yeah.
he's down there, and I'm thinking of him golf and me getting ready for the show, and he calls me.
Yeah.
So there we go.
It's funny. It's how this all.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And boy, June 18th is going to be fun.
Yes, it is.
Should I wear a crucifix or something?
No,
It brings-
that is the thing that everybody says, you are a demon or you work with the devil. No, I do not. I am not demonic or anything like that. Even though, there's been things that I've seen that, I didn't know if it was, can aliens make people like levitate, stuff like
Yes.
that? Okay,
Yes.
my dad was able to do all that. So I think my dad was actually working closely with some aliens.
They lift cows up all the time. Victoria was lifted up and vibrated through her wall. She passed right through her wall. Okay, so there's a lot of physics that they can perform that we don't understand.
Right.
So, sure.
Well, he opened that part of the brain that we haven't fully opened up, and if we all have this ability in our head, but we only use 20% of our brain, I guess. Which I don't know. Maybe
I don't know how they measure that sort of stuff.
I know. I wish I usually probably use 5% of my brain. But yeah.
Well,
I can tell you, you're no demon. I have had many
and people see
interesting times with you, and we've worked to help a lot of people a lot of times. And when you are present in places that I am not even, we're 300 miles away from each other, and you're doing light work and working in that kind of type of capacity, it is quite amazing. And don't let anybody ever tell you that you're a demon, because you're far from that.
It's sadly been the church people, the people that go to church.
Well, I don't tell you. Maybe they're not. Maybe they don't know the right.
I told them, I said, it's a good thing you're going to church because you seem to need it more than I do. It's judgmental. It's hate to be that way, but
the best thing that two people can do is have an open mind and be able to look at things and be able to study the things that they are. I mean, Ray can tell you the same thing, because look at all the things that he has come across and sees, and the people that he's talked about. Excellent advice, as we would all say, when you're in this type of situation and you have the type of stuff that you've had and others that, that you and I have talked about and we deal with on an all-time basis. And currently, I think we're working with 16 different abductees right now. But at that time, there is so many different things to do. And anytime you can write it down and record and think all those thoughts and be able to get to the professional help, and believe me, there are some really good people out there that will listen and do that stuff. And then there's also some that are not too good. But if you pick a professional like Ray, and if he gives you an idea of someone that would be good to be able to use and be able to talk to, I think it would be a great idea to be able to have that type of thing. So, and you and I have talked about that many times before. So, because I affect my environment pretty bad, and I don't know if it's because of stuff that I've kept in and didn't talk about, but. Well, the biggest part about abductees and everything else is that it's a shock to their whole life system, because as they go through this problem, as this happens to them, it is like a shock to their system. It's PSD. And what do? You wake up going, I've been lied to all my life, because you have this certain perspective of your way that life went. And all of a sudden, how many, and you've seen a lot of the guests that I've had on the show that are abductees or have had those kind of type of situations all say, I'm so sorry for making fun of people that had this experience, because now I'm one of those. And I used to not believe what it was and everything, and they have that life-altering experience where it happens that way. So, but it's crazy, and it's part of our field. It's part of the stuff that we love. And Ray has been so great to be able to write about it. And Ray, I got to pitch your books right now. The series that you worked on, great series. I know the name changed a little bit, but now the name is the Alien. Go ahead and give us the three names.
It's the Alien Shades of Greys Trilogy. Now they're each individually sub-named after that. Originally, the series was going to be, that was the original one, 50 Shades of Greys. And
Right.
then it turns out that the people who do the porno, the 50 Shades, and all that,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
well, it turns out that they trademarked the phrase 50 Shades. And I went, what? How can you trademark a standard English thing? And they said, well, when they didn't say anything with the first book, but the second book, they said, well, you're now coming out with a series and we can't let you do that because you're in our class. And the way trademark works, there's classes. Now, had I made ashtrays and they didn't make ashtrays, it wouldn't matter. But we're both
Right.
in the same class with books. And they said, we don't want you to do this. So I said, let me see if I understand you. And I'm talking to the lawyers now. You're afraid that somebody who's interested in smutty sex is going to confuse my book on aliens with your porn, right? And they went, yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
If there's probing involved,
There's
Yeah.
probing.
Exactly.
He doesn't say much, but they're classics.
Yeah.
wow.
So I changed it, and yeah, I've still got copies hanging around, but it's
Yeah.
Alien Shades of Greys, and like the content really
Yeah.
it needs to be updated because things happen. Like in the first book, I had mentioned that I had never had a chance to interface with Jim Peniston, and lo and behold,
Now you do it.
who wrote the endorsement for book number 3 is Jim Peniston because
Right.
I've been able to communicate with him, and Charles Halt. So a lot of things have changed. I have new information. In fact, people have come to me and said, I was in Michigan in 1966, and I have some information that's never been made public before. So on those cases, folks have given me new info, and I'm going to bring some of that with me on the 18th of June.
Excellent. And you have tons of, it's like, I know you have pictures of quite a lot of different pictures and a lot of different kinds of things that you also have with you. It's amazing. And I might bring some of the ones that I have from some of the cases that we worked in. I'd love to share those. I'd love to share those with you to see what your opinion would be. But the second book is The 50 Shades of Grey, Victoria's Secret's Truth. And this one was forwarded by Dr. Leo Sprinkle. And he was the one who actually did he actually do her regressions?
Yes, Dr. Sprinkle did 2 of her regressions, both of which I had and I used as part of the basis of the book. Barbara Lamb did a regression with her, and I had that audio. And Yvonne Smith did the 4th regression. So transcripts of all 4 of those regressions are in the book. Well, not only that, but I got to spend time with each of those individuals, either through email, telephone calls, or in person, like with Barbara Lamb and Yvonne Smith, and discussing Victoria's case. Questions like, how easy would it be to hoax something like this? And, I asked that same type of question to all 3 of the regressionists, and their unanimous answer was, there's no way that this person was so consistent and could fool all 3 of us. There's just no way. And so, that absolutely convinced me of that. In fact, Barbara Lamb and I were speakers at the 2019 UFO Mega Conference, and I gave her a copy of the book early in the week. And in there, I like to add some humor because this can be a very dark subject. And in there, I said things like, well, during the regression, Barbara Lamb is trying to elicit information from Victoria by asking very specific questions. And so she asked Victoria something, thinking that this might lead to some kind of further exposition. And Victoria goes, no, not quite. And so I wrote in the book, strike 1, Barbara. And then she asked the second question, and I go, and Victoria goes, no. And I go, strike two, Barbara. And then I go, Barbara Lamb is on the edge. She's got a 2-strike count on her. And then she asks the next question, and then Victoria just opens up, and I go, and Barbara Lamb knocks it out of the park. So Barbara reads the book, and we're both still at the conference, and she catches me in the hallway. She goes, I want to talk to you.
Excellent.
And so she corners me at the book, and she goes, man, you had me worried when you had me on a 2-strike count. I didn't know where you were going with all of this. But she said, yeah, so she loved it. Yvonne loved it. Dr. Sprinkle, of course, wrote the foreword. He loved it. And I was able to iterate with these people, and it really convinced me that, what I had was genuine material. It was vetted.
Well, Ray, I see that the books are selling right now as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes.
nice. Does that coordinate the Project Bluebeam? I don't do the I bought tonight. Do the Blue Book? Does that Bluebeam and Blue Book are separate issues? Blue Book was the Air Force's investigation, and I lost the handle of what Project Bluebeam was. Sorry, Emily. You look very interested, and nice smile, by the way.
Project Bluebeam is the actually where they're beaming. Oh shoot! Okay. Help me out here. What's that new technology?
I told you I couldn't remember.
Yeah. All of a sudden, I have it on my top of my head, and it just went right off my tongue.
Senior moment.
Yeah, I know. Terrible senior moment.
Well, there was Moonbeam, Moonbeam was the recovery of artifacts that fell from space, or that moon dust. That was called Project Moon Dust. And then Moonbeam was like a follow-on to that. But Bluebeam, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to Google that later after I watch Oak Island.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Bluebeam is where they're actually projecting an image. And I'm trying to remember the name of what that is actually called when they're projecting that. I can't think of it, so I apologize. But they project that to be able to fool somebody. They can make it as a UFO.
Like a hologram?
A hologram. Thank you so much. That was the word I was searching for. A hologram. And if you want to fake an alien invasion, what are you going to see? You're going to see an alien ship. If you want to bring the end of the world, you're going to be able to see Christ walking on a cloud or on a crucifix. Those are the things that they're working with, and ever since seeing Michael Jackson walking backwards 3 months after he was dead, I think it's pretty cool.
It's called a deep fake.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, that's awesome. And guys, you can get his book on Amazon's. Please pick them up. Super guy here. Ian.
I'll bring copies with me to sell at our little soiree down there in Kentucky.
And anybody that wants to bring your things to sell. Anybody, even people that come and pay to come for this, can bring. If you have books or whatever, we'll sell stuff for people to sell things. So I just want this to everybody. Yeah.
So welcome vendors and everything else, and we will have all that good stuff out there also. And
I just had one question though. Does anybody have a dog creature, like a dog-looking dog figurine or animal? Nothing, like a dog.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
A wolf.
We both had an idea, thought at the same time whenever that conversation came up earlier about your findings.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it once we go offline.
Yeah.
And see if that's what you're picturing.
I think so. I'll pick it up on somebody's dog looking thing.
We both did it at the same time.
No,
okay.
Something else. What is it?
Well, there's a certain dog thing that I want to tell you about that you don't know about that has been seen lately around here.
That might be. See, I get so many different things, and I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me. But if it makes sense to one of you all, it has to be somebody. I'm trying to connect with him, but I've never had it with 4 people. I always have one person I focus on, so it's like my head is
So-
like getting clouded, and all of a sudden this dog-looking creature, I see its legs, and it looks kind of dark, and I'm like, why am I seeing this dog creature in my head? You know, I didn't know if it was. Go ahead.
Is it like upright or is it four-legged?
He's kind of looks like he's lunging a little bit, kind of like his legs are kind of like standing up a little bit, but kind of like, you know, the legs hanging outward, like
Mhm.
Back
he's
legs
kind of
down, front legs up.
out, like
Kind of
yeah.
like
like
sticking
that,
out?
like that. Yeah, yeah.
Bear, are you going to attend this thing?
Oh yes, yes.
You sure it's
Okay.
Yes. We'll
So-
definitely be-
I just want to let you know beforehand, after listening to Debbie talk, wherever you go, I'm going to be right behind you.
You're gonna see some weird
Yeah.
things. I'll tell you that right now. Me and Bear, we bring the weirdness. We really do.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Well,
off,
funny
off,
being
off
normal,
angle, but I want to be close enough where I can grab your T-shirt and you can drag me out of it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll protect you. I
You got
promise.
a deal. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
a
I'm
deal.
not sure if it's a dog or not. But I'm just seeing this thing lunging,
Okay.
kind of like with his legs out, or you know,
Mhm.
outward. Like,
Yeah.
what is? Is it you that I'm?
I don't
Tonya?
know because I have something in the living room,
Okay.
but it's not a
Okay.
dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we got problems then.
I don't know. I just
Okay.
see this. I just
Yeah.
figured it was a dog
Well,
because of the
it's-
legs.
Well,
Mhm.
folks, I hate to do this. I hate to run it out, but
Oh.
I'm going to let Ray
I'll
close
send you
this off
pictures.
because Ray has been so kind to be here for 2 hours with us, and I know he wants to do some Okiling tonight. So.
That's my crack, man.
Yeah, that's it. Gotta have the crack. Gotta have it.
We're on that too,
Ray,
And here's hoping there's a season 10.
right?
yeah, we so appreciate you being here tonight, and we hope that
Yes.
you come back and we'll talk about the event more.
Great.
I'd
Yeah.
love to have you as another guest, and thank you so much. And chat room, thank you for all your questions and everything else for Ray, and thank you, Debbie, for hooking us up and bringing us here to this great show tonight. We appreciate it very much. And everyone, Ray, go ahead and tell everybody where they can see you at, how they can get in touch with you, and so forth. I'd love you if you do that before we get off the air.
Okay. Get me by email. The email is pretty simple. It spells out "it's a UFO" at yahoo.com. So it's ITSA yahoo.com, and you can get in touch with me that way. That's a good way to start. I have a Facebook page. Looks just like it does here on the screen. That's the spelling. So type that in to the find and you'll find me there. And you'll see the covers of my books, so you'll know it's me. The books are available on Amazon, and the reason I didn't go to a publisher is because as somebody who held a security clearance, the government was going to force a 1-year delay on the publication of my books if I had a publishing contract. So rather than delay my books for a year each time, I just decided to self-publish. And, it's not a glory thing. I don't care if I ever get a publisher or not. So just know that. So on Amazon. And then I have a friend who owns a small bookstore in Fenton, Michigan. I'm from Detroit. It's not too far from there. It's called The Open Book in Fenton. And every year I go up there and I drop off a couple dozen autographed copies of all my books. And that's where you can get autographed books from. So drop in, see Karen at Fenton's Open Book.
Fantastic. And you can also catch Ray on June 18th
Yes.
in Walton, Kentucky, as we speak about UFOs and the paranormal, and also do a paranormal investigation at a wonderful location, the Gaines Tavern. And we'll be putting out more information on that shortly. So please look for that. We all look for you to be there. And again, Ray, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. We thank you immensely. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you soon. I think you're also going to be, is it a vicious rumor, or am I hearing that you're going to be also at the UFO MegaCon 2022?
I was going to be a double speaker. That was canceled.
Okay, that's what I didn't know if it was still planning
one
on
that
or
was
something like that.
the
I
one that
didn't
was
know
in
if that
Las Vegas
going on.
was canceled. In fact, I was
Yes.
supposed to be a 3-time speaker at Contact in the Desert in 2021, and well, we know that got canceled. So my shot of glory on the stage, the next time that's going to happen is I'm going to be giving a talk at a small little new event in North Myrtle Beach on Friday, the 13th of May at 11 o'clock. And
Excellent.
yeah, they've got this new thing. I don't know. I don't even remember the name, but North Myrtle Beach Library. And I go there every year because my buds and I do a golf trip. And then on the tail end, I do some talks down there. So it's a good tax write-off.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
All right.
Again,
So thank you guys. Thank you so much. It was such fun.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to seeing y'all
Thank you.
again. And, if we survive the 18th of June.
There we
Yes.
go. There we go. We will. We will. I hope
We
so.
will.
Yeah.
We'll
I
all be a
promise.
little different, though. Again,
Truly.
yeah. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Billy and Tonya, and thank you to our wonderful listeners. We do these shows for you, and we hope you enjoyed it greatly. Until next week, let's stay healthy, stay good, and God bless. And we'll see you next week on Into the Farm.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Good
Ray.
night.
Adios, everybody. Have a good one. And if I